look back to 45 years ago. I was coming off the interstate down into Newport in April of 1980. I was applying for a job as Orleans County State's Attorney, and I saw Lake Magog, and I fell in love with it. It was love at first sight, and it was a love that's lasted for 45 years. More than that, I fell in love with the community that I'm living in. Stubborn, ornery, wonderful, high-spirited. We hold our grudges dear to our hearts because they keep us warm in winter. It's a grumpy place in so many ways, but I'm at home. I was applying for a job as Orleans County State's Attorney. The previous state's attorney had died under indictment. I'll get to that in a minute. But I applied to the Orleans County Republican Committee for the job. And my basic pitch, there were a lot of other people applying, was I have two liabilities. I have $17,000 in student loans, and I'm a Democrat. I have two assets. I have a Dodge Dart Swinger worth about $600, and I have a law degree. And I ended up getting appointed to the job. And when I came into the office, they recommended me along with a couple other people. I went through a whole complicated process, but Governor Snelling appointed me. And I walked into the office, and the first thing I found was, this was May, mistletoe over the desks, Fredericks of Hollywood catalogs, and $40,000 worth of jewelry in my desk drawer. Leroy Null was a non-attorney. He was a former deputy sheriff who ran on a platform that the lawyers had so screwed up the system that a non-lawyer had to do a better job. He was banned from court after about 6 months because he didn't have a license. And prior to his election, he had apparently been supposedly patrolling in towns of Barton and Orleans. And this is a tall tale aspect of it that's probably not true, but I'll tell it anyway, because I'm judgment-proof myself now. So he and his buddies were up in Sherbrooke at the girly shows. And what I discovered when I came to town was Leroy had appointed a hooker from Montreal as a deputy.
At least she had good taste.
So she had a badge, so she could, and I got the bill. The bill was on the desk too. And what I discovered was apparently that the interim state's attorney had figured things out and had told this woman that they suspected that she had $40,000 worth of Leroy Bell's wife's jewelry in her possession. And that this is how I reconstruct this. There were two theories. Oh, she invited her down. She said that she had some mail, so she was sitting in Newport. There are two theories. Either the jewelry was loaned to her so she could look really good on a date, or it was given to her for sexual favors, in which case that would be a crime in Vermont. And so this woman elected the first alternative and returned the jewelry. And so my first job as state's attorney was not to go in to prosecute a bunch of cases. It was to return $40,000 worth of jewelry to Leroy's grieving widow. I called her up. I said, I found some jewelry in the drawer. Is any of this yours? I'd love to see whether it is. And she said, well, I'm missing some jewelry. I'd love to, sure. So I went up for some coffee with her. Now, I had seen Leroy. I had been a deputy state's attorney for a while, and I'd seen Leroy at Deputy State's Attorney's meetings with this hooker, and they would come down for dinner and for breakfast, but for any educational seminars, they were definitely missing. So I kind of knew all this, and as I'm up having coffee with Leroy's widow, she identified the jewelry. I said, I'm really happy to return it to you. And at one point, I spent about 3 or 4 hours with her. I mean, she was a grieving widow. But at one point, she turned to me and she said, poor Leroy, nobody understood him. He worked so hard. He worked, and I'm sipping my coffee, nights and weekends. And I twitched, trying not to spill it on the coffee on my suit. So when I came to town, I like I say, I did fall in love, not just with the landscape, the working landscape of Orleans County, but of the community. But I'll tell you, there were a lot of honorable and dishonorable outlaws amongst us. And some of them are still here, but one of them was a man who's still alive, John Moore Lanphier, lives in Brownington. He was at the time living in a compound with his mother, Marjorie Moore, and the police really wanted him. There had been a bank robbery in Orleans, and they suspected John Moore Lanphier of the bank robbery, but they couldn't pin it on him. And the feds came into town, and they walked all over here with their suits and their black shoes, and nobody would say a word to them. And I heard it today. Somebody said to me about something I said to him, and he said, I can't tell. That has two meanings. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't know, but it does mean I can't tell. And so nobody would tell these guys anything. So they couldn't prove the robbery, but they did ask, and this is also a tall tale, they hauled John Moore Lanphier into the grand jury in Burlington under my speculation, my theory, and asked him, what was Marjorie, your mom, doing spending all this cash around town right after the bank robbery? And my speculation is that John Moore Lanphier told them, well, I deal drugs. Now, they're investigating a bank robbery. They can't do anything with that. Now, that's just my speculation. But anyway, I am told that this was before I arrived. He showed up at the demolition derby with a car, and on the top of it, it was written, compliments of the Howard Bank. And then in the trunk, he had a whole bunch of fake paper money and a trigger, so that the minute he was bumped in the back, out would fly all this cash. Now, I don't know, I have some people here to fact check some of this, and I'm not going to ask them to, because that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. But I told the police, if you get something on John Moore, I'll go with it. Well, we also had a quadriplegic drug dealer in town, Linwood Berrio, and he had tragically broken his neck in a diving accident swimming as a kid, and Voc Rehab had given him an accountant's degree and a black van with no windows all around it and accessible to him. He was quadriplegic, but he could move his arms and his legs. So he could drive with his black van and his accountant degree, and he was rehabilitated. He became a drug dealer in town. And the police really wanted to get him. And he was parking out in front of schools and stuff like that. And I said, well, when you get something on him, let me know. So one day we get this call from a snitch with maybe 15 DLS charges pending over him. And he said, if you go to McDonald's you'll find Linwood and John Moore Lamphere in a van and a guy in there with a face that looks like hamburger meat. What had happened was Linwood had been hanging out with a jerk from Burlington who had stolen half an ounce of cocaine from him. And Linwood couldn't let that go unanswered. So he marshaled John Moore Lamphere and another guy to go to Burlington, kidnap the jerk, and drive him around town, or beat him up on the way back, and drive him around town and show him to Linwood's clients and say, don't with Leroy. I mean, don't with Linwood. So they showed him to the jerk's girlfriend. The girlfriend was from this area, and the mother of the girlfriend didn't like her daughter hanging out with the jerk. I mean, he was a jerk. Who would steal anything from a quadriplegic in keeping with today's themes? And the mother said to them, well, if you beat him up some more, I'll buy you a case of beer. So she had an account at Jimmy Quick, so they negotiated. They said at the time Heineken was the premium beer, and they said, well, we want a case of Heineken. And so she ordered Heineken, they picked it up, and then they got hungry. I mean, beating up a jerk and drinking, you get hungry, and so they went up to McDonald's, and that's how they ended up there. And the police came down with a snitch and broke open the van, pulled the jerk out, and we charged John Moore Lamphere and his buddies with kidnapping. So while that case was pending, John Moore Lamphere, first of all, we had to get Linwood in and out of the court, and we didn't have handicap accessibility at that time. So that was always an issue, and Marjorie Moore, John Moore Lamphere's mother, was always on the courthouse steps bringing down the wrath of God on me for going after her son. While they were doing that, John Moore Lamphere, they were all out on bail. He got wind that, his wife got wind, Tamara Moore Lamphere, got wind that John Moore Lamphere was having an affair with a 17-year-old girl. So she rounded up a couple of outlaw buddies, Dee Dee something or other and somebody else, and they went off and kidnapped the 17-year-old, cut off all of her hair, stripped her naked, and left her in a field in Westmore. So while John Moore Lamphere is facing charges of kidnapping, in comes his wife with her charges of kidnapping, and we went through that for months. It took a while to get to cases settled or tried. And finally, Linwood Barrio pled guilty, and then John Moore Lamphere ended up pleading guilty. And as he left the courthouse in chains, he walked up to me and shook my hand and said, I never thought you'd get me. I hope when I get out of jail, you're a defense lawyer because I may need one. So that was one of my early days in Orleans County, and I don't know how I'm doing for time, but moving on, so what the hell is this ice saw doing here? The theme is a bad joke takes a wrong turn, leads to an adventure. Now I've started, and if any of you think it's easy to start outdoor recreational events in any place, it's a struggle, especially in a financially challenged community like this has been. But there's been a lot of community support, a lot of volunteer support that has allowed it to happen. But I'll tell you, the first year I organized Kingdom Swim, we thought we'd get 10 people. We ended up with 100. So 3 mile, 1 mile, and 10 mile swim out and around the islands from Crowdy Beach. It was 2009. The night before Kingdom Swim, like in the middle of the night, a roaring thunderstorm came through the area. And it knocked out all the power just as I was printing out my deployment schedule for boats. And the rain was pouring down, and I had no electricity, I went into the east side, no electricity there. It was still pouring down. The thunder had stopped. I had to handwrite it. We got to the beach. It was still torrential downpour. The swimmers were fine with that. The kayakers were very, very nervous. And I'll tell you, 20 minutes before the start of the swim, the rain just stopped. I mean, and a lot of my inaugural events have been those kinds of challenges, and it's a community around us that has allowed us to build these events. The first swim the length of the lake that we did, it was predicted that there would be 4 miles an hour wind at midnight when we had 11 people swimming north. We came around Ference Point, and it was 20 mile an hour steady winds coming down the lake. It was in the aftermath of the hurricane in 2011, and the waves were phenomenal, and the kayakers couldn't keep up with the swimmers. And I turned to my crewmate in my boat and said, "Christian, shoot me now so I don't have to watch these swimmers die one at a time." Mm-hmm. And it was that bad. And 4 swimmers prevailed. One of them is here in this room, Charlotte Bryn. Take a bow. 6 others didn't make it, but they came back and finished their business next year, to their credit. And at dawn, I felt like, there'd been some British-French battle that, of Aragon, where you think you've lost and you wake up in the morning and your men are still standing. And Charlotte and 3 others were still swimming and made it to the end of the lake. And after that, swimming grew and grew and grew. And the next year we had 200 swimmers, and we had at Kingdom Swim, and we grew into other events. So as we're doing all this, we're working on Winter Carnival, and I post a joke on Facebook. And it's this picture, and it's, "Anybody want to go for a swim?" It was a joke. And I got a call from this guy who says, a very well-respected marathon swimmer, and he says, "Phil, are you serious?" And I said, "Well, I'm half serious. I mean, I think we can cut a pool in the ice." I didn't realize that the ice would be 3 feet thick when we tried to do it. But we can cut a pool in the ice, but I don't know anything about winter swimming, and I wouldn't try to do that unless I had somebody who did know. And he said, "Well, a group of us have just come back from Europe at an international winter swimming championship, and we created this organization, U.S. Winter Swimming Association, but we don't have a venue." I said, "Perfect, if you're up for some heavy lifting." I said, and he said, "Oh, I'm all about heavy lifting." Well, if any of you have heard anybody say they're all about heavy lifting, do not trust them in a minute. So, I mean, I did get some help from them, I will say that. But we were helped by Andy Capella, Newport Rec Department, the city of Newport helped cut the first pool. And it was nothing easy. The ice literally was 3 feet thick. Dan Galvin donated his Kubota. We hauled that out with ice. It took them 3 or 4 days to cut it. Friday evening, they were sitting at Jasper's Bar. They had finished the pool, 25-meter pool. And I said, "Well, can you come tomorrow morning to make sure that it's open?" I had a bubbler and stuff like that, but they looked at me like, "You got to be shitting me." So now I didn't have anybody to open it. So the next morning we show up, and we had some fancy pants from Europe, the International Winter Swimming Association folks. There were 4 of them. And they're used to all these European towns that do everything for them. When they showed up Saturday morning, and I'm out there Friday night with my platforms, what are we going to do? Because nobody from the association has shown up to help us drop the platforms, figure out how to keep the pool open, help out in any way, shape, or form for that. And I was thinking, what do I do? And I said, well, what do you do when you're faced with an insurmountable challenge? You say, So the next morning they show up and the pool is frozen over, and I give them a sledgehammer. I don't even have I didn't even have a chainsaw. So we had a Latvian and a Russian and a guy from England pounding the ice. We broke it open. We had a great afternoon of swimming. We made history in North America because to this day, we're the only ice pool in all of the Americas. The 25-meter competitive winter swimming. There are other winter swimming events around, but we're the only one. So I was thrilled that we had made history. The Europeans weren't, the U.S. winter swimming folks weren't pleased, and they went their way. And then the question was, what do we do? So I turned to a few people and said, what do we do? Do you want to keep doing this? And they said yes. So we started building from there, literally from scratch. The first 3 years we had 30 people, 40 people show up each year. And we decided to describe it as a festival, not as a championship. We decided to have a hat competition. Is there a second slide that... Oh, there's Charlotte. There's a hat competition. We decided to have a hat competition to stress the fact that this was very doable and less intimidating. And we grew the sport, and we went around and started a Facebook post that said, we are not alone. And I went and identified every winter swimming person that I could in North America. And they gradually started coming. And and we had a blast. And then a couple of swimmers decided to pose out in front of the pool. Nadine Bennett, who has signed the ceiling of the bar for having swum the length of the lake. And so is Charlotte. And Nadine Bennett posed out in front of the pool with her jammies with two other Canadians. And we decided to have a jammy and vodka shooter party after the first day of the swim. And one of the things I really do try to encourage these events is their celebration of the sport. And we have a warm-up at Jasper's with the winter swim, and we have fun at the vodka shooter party, and Bar Hill came into the town and has sponsored that party and has offered the free vodka to anybody who shows up in their jammies. And as a result of that, we now have 180 winter swimmers coming this year, and that's the group. And do we have time for a couple of videos? Yeah. I mean, it's past my bedtime. I don't know about you, but I'm really proud of these short videos. If we can.
Makes me want to do this, Phil.
Make it bigger. I'll try.
Can't open.
My God.
You're halfway in, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
So while you're setting this up, I will tell you that during the pandemic, a lot of the pods of winter swimmers grew because the pools were closed, and so we exploded. Here we go.
Okay. That's going to do its best.
This is a group from Maine. They call themselves...
Most people think this is crazy, but we think this is like the best thing ever.
I feel excited. I'm not ready for school, but I'm nervous. But I'm so happy to be here.
Is it too late to enter, Phil? Is it too late to enter this year?
Yes.
This is my second year coming to Memphremagog.
This is my first year coming to Memphremagog.
Oh, so quick.
Memphremagog. It's so much different than dipping together on the island, because when we go in, we kind of like wade in and we're talking and chatting. Here it's like you climb down the ladder, you're in, you go. It's just like all happens so fast, but it's also really kind of luxurious because they walk you out, they help you take your clothes off, then you get in, and then as soon as you get out, somebody like wraps you up and warms you up and then walks you right into this warming station, and that, I mean, we're used to trying to like get dressed while our fingers aren't working, so this is super bougie.
You have to be completely present, you know, there's very few opportunities in life where everything is just like right in the moment, and you can't help but be there.
And being around all these other like-minded sort of kooky people, not just the Tips, but all the other people that come here as well, it really kind of fills up my cup.
It's nice to have this place to come to, just to meet other groups and people. I think we're all probably in the same
2 laps.
camp of understanding each other.
To consider myself to be a competitive person, like with myself, not with other people necessarily, and so it's fun for me to go out here and just challenge myself to like do the 200 and, you know, do some events and try to do well.
I felt really supported when I swam, and that was amazing for me. It's a totally different experience than any other I've had. Yeah, Heidi!
It doesn't matter how fast I swim or how far I swim. It's just about getting in, getting out, and just a celebration of like being together. There's no fear that I'm going to get booed. Like everybody is here. And what I love about this sport is I feel like some of the people who have maybe had the biggest like struggles in the water get the most applause. There's this energy, the collective effervescence of an event like this, or of swimming together, or even outside of a larger event. And it's the power of doing something that is shared and profound, and it really brings up your spirit.
Aww. This is so great. This is so great.
I wish that everybody could experience coming to the front of God.
Yeah, I look pretty good.
And
Oh my God. To get into that, very cool. It's not that bad.
You don't believe me?
It's cold. It's totally cold. It's really cold. It's cold and wet.
One more video. Yeah, I've got a couple. What do you want to do?
What?
Do you want to talk a little bit? Do you want to watch another video?
No, let's do the next video.
The next one? This
Yeah.
one? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
This is gorgeous.
Oh, no sound, sorry.
Oh, God. Oh. Good turn.
Yeah, sure.
Go, go, go. What?
It's not a plunge.
Bill, I want to do it.
We'll try to come to 2025.
Get it.
Maybe the first time.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
So that's the winter swim, and I'm proud to announce that our recruiting drive Heather McGowan has just signed up as the first registrant for 2025. We're full this year.
Thank you. I will be there.
Yeah. Well, you'll be the first to know. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening.
I don't know what Patrick usually says at this point, but I do appreciate everybody coming out, listening, and just being present. So, thanks, yeah.
Give it up for Carter!
Questions? Do we have questions?
Oh.
I have two. One is, did you ever jump in that water?
I've jumped in St. Lawrence. I've not jumped in. I've swum St. Lawrence in 40-degree water.
All right.
But not that water. That water is 30.5 degrees Fahrenheit. You think, how is that possible? Well, it's microscopic slushy. It's that cold. This is the
That
coldest,
sounds really good.
This is the coldest water in the world.
There are 2 women right here that do it every year. You can ask them.
Yeah, Pam Lads and Charlotte Bryn. I say it is colder than Siberia because it could also be, the air temperature can be 10 degrees below zero when we start some days. And it may get up to 35 when it feels balmy. But it is, the first year I said to myself, to people, oh, it's not that cold, don't worry, it's not that cold. And as I was realizing, as I was lying to myself and to them, I said, no. And then so I came up with our motto is totally cold. This is totally cold water. And you train for it, you don't just jump into it. People have been training all winter, and winter swimming is now growing around North America, and pods are swimming year-round. They're not just coming up here to do this. You have to immerse yourself. So, what's your second question, sir?
Well, it goes back to your days as state's attorney. When you came to Vermont, it was legal to drink a beer in your car.
Yeah.
And then that law got changed, the open container law.
I opposed it.
And you told me that as state's attorney, that you always had a beer on your way home from work. And that you were bloody well going to continue to have a beer. And now, when I drive home from work and drink a beer, I think of you.
I'm glad I made it possible for you.
But I wonder, did you really, as state's attorney, continue to drink a beer on your way?
It's a Vermont way. I mean,
Is your name Johnny? Is your name Johnny?
No.
I was of the opinion, prosecute intoxication while driving.
Right.
But there were a lot of people that could not find their way home unless they were following the beer can going like this and like that. And so we'd have a lot of homeless people if we shut down driving and cruising in the back roads. I mean, it is a Vermont, well, it's at least a North Country tradition. And I have, I'll admit it, a few. In fact, I think I had Easter dinner with my wife one time, eating bologna sandwiches, driving the back roads, and drinking my favorite beer, Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beer.
Oh. Okay, thanks, Bill.
I'm not going to be your character witness if you get kicked out and prosecuted. I recommend putting it on the lower part of the steering wheel instead of the higher part. Just, I don't know why. Any other questions? Good, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Phil. Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.